Rick, feel free to
Yep.
introduce yourself and yeah, we can get started. And William, if you'd like to ask questions, you can use the chat or raise your hand. I'll bring you up on stage.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Rick Pearson, been a 35-year commercial real estate broker. I live in the San Fernando Valley, the west part of the San Fernando Valley here in Los Angeles. Done a lot of work up and down the 101 corridor with a variety of industries. I represent the tenants only. So I represent the businesses that occupy the space as opposed to the landlords, which is really what the commercial real estate business is built around. It's built around companies like ours that represent the landlords. I chose early in my career to represent the occupants because I think it's an underserved community, and I think the occupants really do need help, especially startup companies who don't have sophisticated executive teams put together yet. The founders of these companies can really use some good advice early on to help them avoid making mistakes. Yeah, that's me.
Love it. I also think I'd like to call attention to that it's important that you are taking the stance representing the tenants and trying to help tenants do a better job of selecting space, finding space, and representing their rights and their ability to have more leverage in negotiating leases or other matters. I think it's also important to call attention to because a lot of people are unaware that there are people like you in this role. And I'd like you to expand a little bit more on how uh, potential tenants or existing tenants could seek people out like you and
Yeah.
what that dynamic is because as we kind of discussed last time, most people are unaware of what that role is that you play, but also who's paying the bill for that representation.
Very, very, very accurate information, and that's really one of the challenges to this industry and for the tenants is that they don't know that services like mine exist, and even if they knew they existed, their perception is probably they can't afford to pay for those services. And the reality is, just like if you were to want to go buy a house, um, I think the industry is kind of familiar with the fact that you can find a broker to help you go find your house, and that broker is going to share the fee with the broker who is selling the house for the owner of the house. It's the same concept in the commercial real estate world, um, but people aren't aware of it, especially startup people. I mean, more sophisticated companies are certainly aware of tenant representation. Our industry serves 99% of the large corporations who occupy space around the world. Most of them have a relationship with a company or an individual to represent their interests. Okay. But it's the small people, the small businesses, the startups that really don't know that it's available. And what happens if you're a founder of a startup or a tenant in general is you will drive around the area that you feel you want to lease space in, and you'll call off of the signs that are in front of the buildings, and you will end up getting the landlord's broker. And the landlord's broker will be very nice in giving you information, and telling you that they can represent your interests in helping you lease space, even if it's not in that building. But the reality is you're getting a landlord's broker there. You're not necessarily getting an expert in helping tenants create leverage. So it may not be the best approach. It could work for some people, and I'm sure it works for some people. There's a lot of good brokers out there who can take one hat off and put another hat on and represent a tenant. I just choose to do that exclusively and never represent the landlords. Therefore, I never have anyone else's interest in mind other than the client I'm working for. And my fee is always paid by the landlord. I never have to send my clients an invoice for my services.
That's awesome. It's good news for business owners out there that you know have a lot on their plate, a lot to worry about. Um,
Yeah.
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 So I'm curious. Um, like since the last time we talked, there's been a lot going on in the industry, and potential legislation coming up. And what are some key things that tenants should be aware of in regards to new happenings or potential things that they should be more proactive in?
Yeah. Um, First of all, let's give a big shout out to the Dodgers. Okay, go Dodgers! One more game, put this thing behind us. As to your question, I don't know that there's anything new going on. The markets are always changing. Um, if you're an occupant of space, um, depending on what kind of space you occupy, I specialize in industrial and office space. Okay. Life science falls within that. So there's a lot of industries that occupy industrial or office space. And those are two completely different markets. So there's a different strategy if you are going to occupy or if you currently occupy industrial space than there is if you are looking to occupy office space. And life science is very different as well. So there's different strategies involved in each. There's different timelines involved in each. There's different costs involved in each. The bottom line is the tenants, the occupants, the business owners usually don't have enough experience in this process to even know what they're going to face when they start going out and looking at space. So the biggest mistake I see is people don't plan ahead. If you're whatever your situation is, 6 months in advance is not enough time. You need to start a year or 18 months in advance. Start gathering information. Start doing your, you know, build a relationship, have a relationship with someone like me so that we can help you plan correctly so that you are budgeting the right amount of dollars, both in rent and in capital, that you're looking in the right location because where you might think you want a facility, there might not be a facility that fits your criteria. So you might need to look outside of your criteria, expand your geography, expand your budget. And if you have enough time to learn that in advance, it makes the process a lot smoother for you because wherever you're getting your money from, your capital sources, your VC firm, whoever, it gives them time to realize, okay, we need to budget a little more money for this particular project. So I might have got a little off topic. So if there's something I didn't answer about your question, please let me know.
No, no, no. Yeah, we can expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, in regards to like the planning process,
Mhm.
um, the next step would be preparing that plan and passing it on to you. So, in regards to being the ideal client that's going to help you do your job more efficiently and more
Mhm.
cost effectively, what are some tips for a potential new tenant to to prepare that documentation and pass that along to you? What should be on that checklist?
It's really not documentation. It's more just knowledge. I think sometimes when there's a new relationship, let's say you're a startup, you're a founder, and you've just met Rick Pearson, and you're just building a relationship with me. Sometimes there's a hesitancy to give me information because um, you know everybody tries to keep some stuff close to their fold there. But the more I understand about where your business is today, good, bad, or indifferent, where you think your business is going to go, where you're going to get your money, how much money you have, the more I can guide you into the right strategy. Uh, Companies with great credit and huge cash, it's a different strategy than a company that doesn't have any money. And maybe you have a group of owners of this company who do not want to personally guarantee a lease. So that's a different strategy. But the more information I can understand about you and your business, good, bad, and indifferent, the better services I can provide to you and help you avoid mistakes. Um, and so really openness, let's have an open and honest relationship about what I bring to the table and what you need And I'll ask, and it doesn't have to be anything in writing. It's just a series of conversations, getting to know each other, if you will. Just like you would if you were hiring a lawyer or a CPA. It's a relationship business. Everything's a relationship, and the better our relationship can be, and the better I can understand you and you can understand me, the better I can provide those services to you.
Yeah, it's a common thing for a lot of founders or business operators to be a little paranoid. And
Sure.
I'm glad you brought that up because it often causes more problems than benefits them. I'm curious, what is your, or how common is it for clients or potential clients to pop the NDA request on
I
you?
sign them on. I sign them in every case, especially in the life science world, obviously, because there's certain information that they're going to be giving me that they don't want the public to know. I am very clear on the confidentiality of everything that's being discussed, and the only thing I'm going to divulge to a landlord or a broker or to the market is something that me and my client have discussed is okay to divulge, because part of the strategy is you give enough information to help create that leverage, but not necessarily too much information. So I'm very clear on it. I sign NDAs in 50% of the cases. Some clients don't care about the confidentiality of the fact that, hey, we're going to go out and hire 50 people over the next uh, you know the next year. Some people think that's great information. Go ahead and tell people about that. Go ahead and tell people about how much money I have in the bank. Some clients are good with that, and some clients want to keep certain information confidential, and I'm very clear and very aware of that.
Right on. I like this too because it demonstrates that the use of an NDA in very specific situations is warranted, and it helps, I hope, founders and business operators understand when to actually employ those and not to just like, just throw them around all the time, and be aware of that. So that's
Yeah.
good too.
And there's also other professionals who I can bring in if the founder doesn't have those, in the form of lawyers and whatnot, who can help put those documents together if they don't already have them. So yeah, absolutely.
It's actually another good thing to call attention to, network. Like
Mm.
when people are working with new service providers or companies, partners, whatever it is, they forget to leverage their network that they're able to bring to the table as well. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good reminder. Yeah. Uh,
And people like you and I who have been in this area doing this stuff, working with startups for many years, uh, we again, the more I can learn about what do you need, the more I can help you. It might not be from me, it might be from an HR consultant early on, it might be from a bookkeeper to help you put your books in order. um, you know Lots of different professions that you and I have relationships with that further help the value we can give, or I can give to the client.
Yeah, that also plays into being open and upfront about all the details and the context that the business is operating within, and those upcoming challenges, whether that's hiring or raising a bunch of money, because it gives you more understanding of who you can bring into the fold to help out with those things, right? So yeah, it's all really good reminders and tips.
Yeah. Sometimes clients are hesitant to tell me, well, I don't have the money raised yet. That's normal. If you already had the money raised yet, then you're behind the eight ball. So I'm very familiar with how I have to provide services to someone, and there might not be a transaction because the money doesn't come through or the money takes too long. So again, when you work with a broker who's a real estate expert who is experienced in working with startups, it's part of the process. We know that there are times when we're going to provide services and do surveys and go look at space with you and do proposals and negotiate deals. And then the money might not come through, but that's okay. It's part of the process. It's part of what we do. And it's what the founder needs to do so that when that money comes in the door, he's ready to rock and roll on that facility. Because the sooner he gets that facility open, the sooner he or she can get to the next step in that business life cycle.
I'm curious from your experience, what are the benefits, like the other benefits of doing those exercises early on? Like in my experience as a product developer, UX, designer, I, 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 I do this for my own projects often, and I encourage others to do it as early as possible with all the different types of documentation and planning,
Mhm.
because for me, it helps identify a lot of different challenges that I might not have been aware of. And it's easier to kind of navigate those early on while you're still in the planning strategy stages
Sure.
than afterwards. So I'm curious how that might play out when it comes to real estate and facility operations and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, when people put a business plan together, they often don't have the resources to validate what's going into that business plan. And so the earlier I can get involved, look at that business plan, look at the assumptions that were made when it comes to, you know, capital outlay, ongoing operational costs that are involved in the real estate. Um, Even down to the amount of bodies I think I want to hire, does that correlate correctly to the size of space? Therefore, the budget you put together, therefore, the capital outlay you've budgeted for. Oftentimes, if I'm brought in early enough, um, tweaks can be made to that business plan, and then the sources that you're going to for that seed money or that first round, okay, ultimately have better information so that you don't get to a point where, oh, I under budgeted what I need, so I have to go back for another round sooner than I thought I did. Okay. The more you can avoid that in a startup business, uh, the smarter you look and the better chance of success you have, I think. So, you know, down to the business plan. Get me involved as soon as possible while you're putting that business plan together. It's not hard for someone with the experience that I do to help with that without doing a lot of work because it's all sort of up here and it's in the experience that I've had.
Yeah, muscle memory takes over.
Yeah.
um, building on that, another common mistake by founders is rushing ahead, and that applies to every aspect of like operating the business. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the most common ones is when it comes to renting a space. They have these grand ambitions, and they want to get the biggest space possible. Um,
Yep.
in your experience, what are some best practices to properly assess what size and what are some of the consequences you've seen of people kind of rushing ahead with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I usually have this heart to heart conversation with early stage companies, startups. Um, Even in the first 5 years of business, you have to be willing to be flexible with regards to your facility. You're not going to get the facility that you dream of your first time. You don't want that because to get the ideal location, the ideal layout, the ideal finishes, um, and enough space to grow your business, you have to bite off more than you should be biting off. What we should be doing is looking for a temporary situation to get you the first 6 months or a year, and then immediately starting to plan for the next step. Yes, it costs a little bit to move around and to outfit a new facility during those first 5 years, but the money it saves you is huge. And so, again, I think the advice is just whatever you dream of for your ideal facility, that's 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Right now, we're going to get by with something that isn't perfect. Okay. and we're gonna take steps in the right direction over the first 3 years of existence.
With that in mind, this idea of growing into bigger spaces, um, what are the challenges in regards to the term on those leases and how those are negotiated?
Terms are pretty simple when it comes to landlords. Um, if you need a lot of dollars from me to modify the space, then I need a longer term. So from an occupant standpoint, from a tenant standpoint, if this is a band-aid solution, if this facility is going to get me by a year or two, then I want a 2 year lease maximum. Well, I'm not going to get any dollars from the landlord. So therefore, I need to budget those dollars that I need to modify that facility from my capital. Okay. But I, what I'm, even though I spend capital going into it, I save capital by not having to deal with growing out of that space. People often think, well, I can sublease the space. Well, subleasing the space you can do, but most of the time, subleasing the space is no different than just carrying the space until the lease is up. So the shorter lease term we can do for a startup, for an early stage company, is the best approach in my opinion. Okay, and obviously there are some differentiating things that would force us to go long term, in the sense that we have to invest a ton of capital on our own. Well, then we kind of have to go long term on the lease. So short term, minimal amount of improvements is the best approach if we can find that facility for an early stage company. Long term leases are expensive, hard to get out of.
When a company is making those improvements and investing their own dollars into those improvements, can any of that be recouped when it comes to exiting that lease and moving away from that and leaving those improvements to the landowner?
Usually not. Tenants often think that if they put money into a space and make it look real nice, that that's of more value to the landlord. Landlords don't look at it that way. It might be to the next tenant, but they can't bank on that. They can't bank on the fact that that next tenant is going to want that room of that size in that corner of the space. So landlords just don't see it the same way. They don't value it, and so not usually.
That's good to know. Okay, William, hands up. I'm going to bring you up on stage so you can ask some great questions. Give me 1 second. All right, okay. All right, you should have the invitation now.
Hi, you hear me?
Yes. Hi, William.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Um, so, I'll, sorry, I'm going to share my experience a little bit. Uh, I I did a co-working space in 2011 in Evanston, Illinois, and it worked really well. It was successful. I had like a good deal with the landlord, where I actually didn't have to have a lease, um, because I had like a family connection.
Okay.
Um, and it actually it it grew pretty quickly. The Northwestern University put their tech incubator in it, right away. But then I shut it down for a variety of reasons. To move to California was part of it, um, and so since then, that was like a big wound for me. Kind of, it's like I had to make a big life decision there. Part of it was that it was never really going to be super profitable on its own. It's a co-working space, so there was like a limit to how much I could really make off of it. It was kind of like subletting, you know. But it was like a lifestyle business. Um, and so now I live in Santa Barbara, and I have thought about opening a co-working space the whole time I've been here, which has been a long time. And now there are a lot of co-working spaces. Um, the I also have this fantasy. I've always fantasized about opening a coffee shop, and I need to have a few friends who have built chains of coffee shops at this point. Um, and that includes, and then I have one person I know, an acquaintance who uh, had a really nice arrangement I liked, which was like a coffee shop and a co-working space together in a storefront. Uh, so currently, currently I'm kind of trying to decide some like what to do next and what to do, and the lifestyle aspect is really important to me. Um, and that was one of the things I struggled with when I had my co-working space. Was I even with the activity, I personally felt a little bit bored. And I'm a coder. I do software, so I want to be able to focus, but I also like having a lot of activity around me. So I find I spend a lot of time in coffee shops.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, where I'm at now is I really, I miss having the co-working space. I'm constantly looking at storefronts, and I have been for like years. There's only so many in Santa Barbara, and I know the rent's really high.
Yep.
Um, so, but and for me, it's important to be like in a busier area where the rents are generally going to be higher.
Yeah.
Uh, so, I mean, I don't know. It's like I'm conflicted about all
Yeah.
this. There is this lifestyle aspect that's a big component that I know is a little bit different than probably a lot of a lot of like normal companies that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you have any like reactions to
You
that so
know,
far?
yeah, it's interesting. I have a wealth management firm that has been a long-term client, and they are growing, and they acquired a firm up in Santa Barbara, and I did a survey for them just a couple months ago of co-working spaces in Santa Barbara, and I found the opposite. I found that there wasn't the two or three that was out there were really old school, almost like what we used to call executive suites. Um, that they didn't have that lifestyle. They didn't have that vibe that you're looking for. Um, now that might just be the ones that had space available. There might be others out there that aren't marketing space available, so I don't run across those. But my experience was that, and I walked away from it thinking, you know what? There's a market for a nice upscale co-working space in Santa Barbara that's exactly what you described, that had that sort of coffee shop feel, that casual environment, but yet also had the private room you could rent to close the door and have quiet when you wanted it. Now, I don't want to say that I've done enough research to say whether or not there aren't any others. I just my initial experience was I didn't really find anything that was cool. I found some older stuff that wasn't really that cool. And when I say cool, I like a WeWork. Those are built to be really cool. Industrious. Those are built to be really cool. But those guys don't have anything that I saw up in Santa Barbara. Now I didn't look up in Goleta. Maybe there's something up there. Is there one or the other area that you prefer to be in?
Oh yeah, downtown, and
Downtown, State
yeah,
Street.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kiva is down there. So there's Kiva, and that Kiva is pretty cool. It's I don't I go there a little bit. The one in the Funk Zone seems to be pretty busy when I go there, and that's like the closest to like a full-on co-working space
Yeah.
that like I would feel comfortable with. That's actually probably the only. There's Sandbox, which is also very hip. It looks really nice, but it's not as busy.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, I really like the traffic. I like the foot traffic. I like, there's certain coffee shops here, Handlebar,
Yep.
that is like it's busy and people like being there. People like working there,
Yeah.
um, and uh, and they actually have a really nice space that like they have the roasting in there, but like in another universe, it could be a hybrid co-working
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but there are
Parking's important for an operation like that, to have places for people to find a park.
parking is a big deal, right? And
Yeah.
especially downtown. It's the one I had in Chicago it was in Evanston, and it is next to the city, It was next
Yeah.
to the city. It was next to the university. It had train access. So I was able to get all the people from the city. So there was like relatively low risk in that sense, because it could draw from like the entire surrounding
Yeah.
area. That's one of the challenges with Santa Barbara, is that like you're only really getting Santa Barbara, and it is
Yeah.
a relatively small town. I
And there's
see
no
the same.
public transportation to get people to and from, so everybody has to drive one way or the other. Yeah, it's tough. It's as a business, I can see why you're struggling. I'm glad you're thinking it through, because it's a catch 22. You got to rent enough space to where you can grow and make it profitable, but you're paying for that space, whether you are full or not in your facility.
Yeah.
It's a tough business to do, and we've seen a lot of them fail, to be honest with you. Um, you know, unless you have a sort of cooperative type landlord who's got a big piece of space, it's been available for a long time, and they give you that ramp up time. In other words, let's have your rent ramp up while your business is ramping up. That's the ideal scenario. It's just hard to come by. It's hard to find.
So I'm curious about that. Like some of these storefronts in Santa Barbara are like, there's a number of vacancies now,
Yeah.
Um, and so I had a really nice deal when I was in Evanston with the landlord, and they were very nice. Um, and it's like, is that possible here? I mean, I haven't even tried yet, but like, is it reasonable at all to assume that I could get like a landlord that would be flexible on a lease, that wouldn't lock me into like a long lease or something, and would allow me you know, to experiment a bit?
It's feasible, but not likely. I mean,
Okay.
landlords are risk adverse. Retail landlords are kind of spoiled because they have this shell space, and they're looking for a retailer to come in and put their own money into building this space out. Retail landlords typically aren't looking to put a lot of dollars into space. Office landlords, especially in the last 4 or 5 years since we've struggled with COVID, and they have a lot more vacancies. Those are the guys that are getting real creative right now to lease up space. It's the landlords that have office space available that doesn't work for your traditional retailers. The retail landlords are pretty spoiled when it comes to what they're used to doing and how creative they're used to getting. It's not as much as the office landlord. The problem is in Santa Barbara, there's not a lot of big office vacancies and big office buildings in general. Most of them are small buildings. Unless you get up into Goleta, then you've got some bigger ones there. You know, is there any of these operations out in Goleta? Because there's a lot of tech businesses out there.
Yeah, there probably are. I don't go to Goleta that much, so I don't know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, it's. I think you got a great idea. It's just it's and running a business like that is not my forte. You need to find some people that have run those businesses, and I mean you have, as you have, but
Yeah.
maybe if you can get to know one of the general managers or owners of one of these other ones, and sit down and pick their brain, might be of more value than me, because I haven't been involved in operating and what it takes to make, how big of a facility, and how much do you need to bring in revenue to make it work. Yeah, that's not something I've had experience with, William.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really into this like hybrid idea recently, and that's like the coffee shop co-working. Most of the businesses that I like here, some of them like Yoga Soup has like this big bookstore, and they're sort of, I look at which founders I kind of relate to the most. And most of these businesses that I'm like interested in are a little bit hybrid. They do one, multiple things. There's like a meadery now that I've been like looking at that I know is like in trouble. They're like financially in trouble, but I really like I really like the business a lot. I
Hmm.
like the space a lot. I like the location. Um, and so like that's one that I like keep thinking about. Like, can I turn this into something? Um, and that one's, but that's like a retail storefront too.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of vacancies, and I know they were doing like pop up stuff. They were like creative a couple years ago, but then I haven't heard anything really in the
Yeah.
past like half. So
Yeah, and I'm not intimately familiar enough with the retail market. I mentioned earlier that I primarily work on office space and industrial space, occupants that occupy those two types of real estate. When it comes to retail, that's a different ball game. There are people like me who specialize in helping retail tenants. So how strong the Santa Barbara, State Street retail market is, um, I'm not a really, I'm not the right person to answer that question, whether it's getting stronger, whether landlords are being more flexible. But I can tell you this, I mean, the more of those retail landlords that you talk to, or their brokers, um, who know that you're looking to do something like this, every once in a while, then you get a little bit of you'll get someone reach out to you saying, hey, my landlord's had this space on the market for a little while. Let's sit down and talk. And if you can have that conversation, or if you can get to the point where you've got a landlord or a landlord's broker reaching out to you because they're interested in your concept, if you can have two or three of those conversations, that's creating leverage. Okay. And you're learning a lot from those conversations. And maybe you find someone who wants to sort of be a partner with you almost on this business, you know?
yeah.
William, real quick, do you have any uh, ambitions to have a makerspace as part of this, where the industrial side of things would play into it?
Mm, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I hadn't thought about it too much. Um, I hadn't thought about that angle.
You mean like a
Um,
studio, like a podcast studio type of thing?
More like a makerspace,
Production?
yeah, production, 3D
Production.
printers,
Yeah.
that side of things. Whether it's,
Yeah.
it could be 3D printers or, laser cutters, and so forth, for more of the physical side of
Yeah.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a maker. I know there's one maker space here in Santa Barbara, but I haven't been there yet. Um, I think it's interesting. I mean, these spaces, a lot of the spaces I've looked at are like long and narrow. They're sort of shotgun style spaces. All these storefronts. So it seems like I could divide them into. I mean, that's why I've always wanted. When I've thought about it in the past, is like divided into sections lengthwise. Um, and like in the space that I'm looking at now, this meadery, it's like only the front third of it is currently used for um, customers, and like, you know, being in there, and the rest of it is industrial now in office. But like that could be cleaned up. So I mean, I have lots of thought. I haven't narrowed it down, but I think that's an interesting option. Yeah.
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 Keep us posted, William.
Okay.
Reach out and keep me informed of your progress, and let me know if I can help you run any surveys, and just maybe you find something you're not seeing on your own.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious, Rick, with those conversations with the broker or the landlords, and trying to appeal to them with, as a partner for the space that they have available, that they haven't been able to occupy. What are some key points to focus on that's going to really get them excited to work with you?
Yeah. I think it depends on if your business is exciting. Some businesses aren't that exciting. So you might want to give the broker or the landlord less information. But this is a unique, this is a creative, this is a vibey type of business that William's working on here. And so I think the best approach is sharing it with the brokers. You're going to know in the first conversation whether the broker responds and says, "Oh, this just went on the market. We got 5 offers already on it." Great. That's not your building. That's not your space. Um, but and again, over time, if you realize that this space has been sitting there for a year, um, share what you want to do with the broker. Hopefully, he's doing his job and sharing it with the landlord, and they'll reach out to you and say, "Hey, we want to sit and talk. We want to talk. Maybe there's an interest here." And if you're having that conversation with 3 or 4 different brokers and landlords, um, and your business is exciting, you're gonna know, you're gonna get that feel. They're gonna be reaching out to you. That's what you want. You want to share the information and the excitement you have for it, okay? And your financial backing. Let's say you've got plenty of money in the bank to do this. You've done it in Chicago. Put a little one pager together and send it to the broker. Say, here's my resume. Okay, here's what I've done. Again, back to that conversation we were having about NDAs. Don't be hesitant with the information. Share it. Get excited about it and put it on paper and get it in the hands of the brokers so that they can share it with their client. And then hopefully what you get is a few people reaching out to you saying, we want to sit and talk. That's how you start creating leverage. And that's how you will find whether you can find a landlord that wants to be your partner and get creative and help you. And don't be shy about what you need. You know, I need some dollars to build the space out, and I need some time to ramp up the business if that's what you need to make it work, right? Some people might go into it and say, you know what, I got plenty of cash to carry myself. I got plenty of cash to build the space out. Okay. What I need is a rock bottom rent so that over time I'm going to be able to have more revenue. So don't be shy about what you need to make this work for you. And you'll get a feel. You're going to get rejection by some brokers and some landlords who aren't able to think outside the box. But you'll find that there's some people out there that are going to reach out to you and say, "Hey, let's talk." Hopefully, you know.
I'm also curious. Do you have any tips on identifying spaces that have been on the market for a long time?
I mean, when I run a survey, there's usually a field that tells me how long the space has been on the market, whether that's 100% accurate or not. And if I'm driving around, if William's driving around and looking at space and calling off of signs, he's not going to know that. But ask the broker, hey, how long has this space been on the market? William's going to have kind of a sense because he's been driving around looking at space. So he's certainly going to know that the space has been on the market for a few months or 6 months. But ask the broker, how long has the space been on the market? Is the landlord ready to get creative on something? I've got a business idea, startup business idea, and here's what I think this space could be.
Right on.
Yeah.
In a related topic, I'm aware that the county and cities often have a lot of property of their own that is sitting there. Do you have any tips or experience with working with city government or county government with those?
Yeah, oftentimes it's more hype. They really don't have it. They want to grow their platform within certain industries and attract more businesses to their city or municipality. Um, but they don't necessarily have the properties really set up to where they're going to be able to do any better than another landlord. And oftentimes, because of the red tape involved in doing something with a municipality, it could end up being more trouble than it's worth. You know, city council's got to approve on it and all that stuff. But I know Camarillo's really trying to attract businesses there, and from what I understand, they're going to invest in. They're trying to get life science businesses out there, kind of compete with Thousand Oaks. So I think you should know someone in the city you're looking to do business in the business development department, to talk about stuff like that, to see if there are any opportunities within a city-owned property. Great information to have. Just don't think everything's maybe 100% of what they make it out to be. Be cautious a little bit. That's been my experience.
Good insights for sure.
Yeah.
William, have any other questions or concerns, thoughts?
I have lots of thoughts. Um, yeah, I don't know if I have more questions yet. Um, you have to think about this. I'm sort of in flux, thinking about this stuff, and yeah, I do think that there's possibly like a market for some of this stuff, but that's kind of where I'm at too. I'm watching businesses come and go currently, watching like what sticks and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Trying to understand like the commercial real estate situation downtown. Um, which I mean that's kind of where I'm at.
William, any interest in any other types of businesses possibly to open? Seem like entrepreneur here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have I don't know. I have my software stuff. So I have a couple software things I'm doing. Um, and so the main thing I want to do is like a publishing platform. I want to do like a new publishing platform.
Got it.
I don't know if there's like going to be a good market for it or what. I don't know yet, but I think I might just do it anyway. And in terms of physical businesses, I just think of these. I just want like one hybrid business. I think
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
it
Gotcha.
really is a lifestyle thing. It's like the yeah. I think a lot about that. I don't want to feel trapped somewhere. It's like
Yeah.
in an office that's because you have to be there every day. You have to commit. It's like such a big commitment.
Yeah.
Um, but
Um,
there are a couple founders and a couple businesses, Yoga Soup and Handlebar, two big ones where like the founders I really relate to. The
yeah.
spaces they choose and the ways they build it out is
Yeah.
like how I would want to do it. And in
Yep.
both cases, they have multiple sources of revenue. I mean, Handlebar gets lots of revenue from their beans in addition to the coffee shop. They have tons of merchandise. Yoga Soup has tons of merch. They have the huge part of their space is like a bookstore. Um, and I really like that. It feels good to me. It's makes a lot of sense to me business wise. I like diversifying a business.
It's
Um,
interesting. It's interesting that you bring up those businesses. Um, my wife and I have recently purchased the area rights, and Santa Barbara is included in that area, to a company called Oxygen Yoga and Fitness.
okay,
Um, check it out. Check their website out. It's a multiple revenue business. It's not just yoga, but it's also fitness classes, all out of the same studio. Very
okay,
simple to run. You could be doing your software stuff on the side and still run a business like this. Um, I think we could easily do 2 units in Santa Barbara over time here. And we just literally the ink's just dry on the relationship and the partnership. We're opening our first unit in Agoura Hills, California, down the 101 here. There is one existing unit in Calabasas, and we're looking to grow from Pasadena to Santa Barbara, maybe 20 units over the next 5 years.
very cool.
So reach out to me if you want to have some more conversations about how that might look.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
hmm Yeah. Reach out to me on the side. We'll connect on that.
Okay, thank you.
Look at this.
This is great. Great
Yeah.
conversation, William. Yeah, Rick,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Yeah, we're coming right up on time. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, any final thoughts, Rick? Any, uh, pro tips, if you will, for people listening in that are in the market for a new space or looking to start their business and make some headway on this?
Yeah. I don't think we talked a lot about startups and sort of the first facility for a business owner, but uh, business owners that have been in business for years and have multiple facilities, they make these same mistakes. They don't bring in the right consultant early on enough to create leverage when it comes to a new lease, but also lease renewals. Um, I want to have that relationship with that business owner for a long time. I want to help that business owner avoid making mistakes and save money in their whatever they're paying the landlord. I want them to be paying less, and I want them to have the right lease for their business. And that's not just startups. And so as that business grows and evolves, there are multiple transactions, multiple leases, multiple negotiations over the years. And I want to be the person that is helping that business owner so that they can focus on raising the next round of money, hiring people. There's so many important things that the business owner should be focusing on. They don't need to understand real estate. There are people like me who can help them navigate the real estate world.
Yes, yes. This is another common thing that a lot of founders, business operators kind of fall into the trap of believing they have to do everything and know everything from top to bottom instead of leveraging people like you and others that are experts in their field. So yeah, I again appreciate you reminding people that it's you're more likely to succeed by leveraging the people around you and building a strong network. Yeah, yeah. So thank you, Rick. If you have anything to plug, you want to send anyone your way, feel free to.
Dodgers.
Yes, yes, go Dodgers. Yeah, I am tempted to say the S word, but I'll avoid it. I don't want to jinx it because I have universal power and I can do that. But yeah, it's been a real exciting series and it's great to see. Yeah, William, thank you for contributing.
Thanks for joining, William.
Yeah, thank you for contributing and being a part of this. For those that are tuning in elsewhere, thank you for watching. Feel free to join us next time. We're going to have Morva Reed, a wonderful lawyer, join us tomorrow at 3 p.m. So if you have any legal questions, come hang out with us tomorrow. And yeah, thank you, everyone. Rick, you're wonderful. Thank you so much.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Take care, everyone. Catch you next time.